Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next instalment of James's, that's me, interviews. I told you to mess this up straight away, but I'm going to plough straight through. So, my guest this week, and I've got an introduction here, and he is sometimes marvellous, occasionally wild, always bad to the bone, and also one of the happiest people I've ever met, at least through the internet. How are you doing, Marc Mero? How are you?
James, I'm doing awesome, man. Glad to be on your show, man. I love England. We've toured over there so many times.
How many times have you been here? Because I would have thought you would have only been here. Well, with WCW, you would have toured more in England, wouldn't you, than WWF?
We went over there a couple times with WCW, and then of course we went over there with WWF, or when I was with WWF.
Right, so we're going to go straight into it, and I realise we're a bit tight for time, so I've just got the best questions I've written. I've written about two. I'd spent about 3 hours writing questions on 3 pages here, but we'll go through the best of them. So, firstly, your charity, Think Positive, or it's just Think Positive, excuse me, and Champions of Choice, I believe, as well. So, how did it all get started, and what's the message, and who are you spreading it to?
Well, I love inspiring, especially young people. I've been through so much adversity in my own life, and sharing some of my stories with people, I've really noticed it's really made a difference in a lot of people's lives. But James, there's no greater joy than helping another person, and that's where you really found happiness. Like if I don't know, it's like I found my calling in life, what I love doing. In other words, I get so much fulfillment out of doing this, more so than I've ever sports and all the things I've experienced. This has been by far the greatest accomplishment I feel I've ever had.
So, I asked before how the charity got started, just before we started filming, and you sort of half confirmed my suspicions that the charity and talking about choices, specifically relating to choices in taking drugs and not, and positive life choices and everything, was sort of born after you started making the circuit on a number of television shows after the Chris Benoit incident. How did you? I suppose how do you sort of get chosen almost to put your name out there to talk about Chris Benoit?
Well, there's a high school in Florida called Melbourne High School, and the coach of the football team saw me on television many times, and he just contacted my office and he said, "Hey, we want to come and speak to our football players about not doing steroids, and just and encouraging the team." I thought, well, that'd be a great idea. I mean, it was maybe 50 or 60 kids. And I went to the high school, and they had all the kids sitting in an auditorium, and I spoke to the students, the football players, about making the right choices in life, and I was really surprised at how many kids actually sent an email or wrote to me about how they really enjoyed the presentation, and how cool it was to meet me, and how some even said, "You changed my life." I thought, wow, that's amazing, man, to just talk to kids for half hour, 45 minutes, and make a difference like that. And what, unbeknownst to me, that coach, I guess, called a couple other high schools and said, "We had this speaker here. He used to wrestle with WWE, and the kids really loved him. You might want to consider having him speak to your school." And it just snowballed from that. And then one school called another, and then my one of the videos we did about my mother went viral, and it just snowballed all over the world. I mean, we went to Russia and spoke at schools in Russia. Last year we were in Guatemala, and it just continues to expand. And other up until the pandemic, of course. But once we get through this, we'll be back out there again, inspiring and encouraging students. But right now we're doing it through virtual. We're doing a lot of virtual events where we're able to still make a difference in students' lives through the virtual presentation.
So, what was the chicken and the egg situation there? Was it first the Chris Benoit thing, or you were just so happened to be starting going at that same time, talking to kids in high school?
Well, I did that back when I was in WCW. I'd actually go to high schools and middle schools and talk to students. So I didn't do it nearly like as much as I did it eventually would do it now, like the way I do it now. But I always enjoyed talking to young people, and but I had to get my own life straightened out. I went through a real valley in my own life, and I think once I got through that, I just had a real connection with students. It's amazing how you walk out there, and you can walk out to 1,000 to up to 10,000 students at a time. I mean, they bust students into arenas now for our presentations. It's incredible. And when you walk out there to see high school kids just sit there going to at the end of the presentation, they're on their feet. It's just been incredible.
So you just said So you said basically throughout your entire wrestling career, you were having your own struggles and peaks and troughs and everything. Where did that all start? Was it something? Was it born out of the stresses of the business, or is it maybe addictive personality, or what might have been in your case?
I think for me, it was more of an addictive personality. I mean, I had trouble with drugs way before I got into wrestling. I spent 10 years of my life drug addiction before I even got into wrestling. And I made some really bad choices in my life, and went through broken hearts, broken relationships with family and friends, and a divorce, and all kinds of, you know, sadness in life. And I relate to that. I mean, I'm very open and honest about where we all have a past. You either run from it or you grow from it. And I feel I've really grown from the mistakes I made. You get wisdom from one of three ways. You get wisdom from like books and DVDs. You get wisdom from mentors like your parents or a coach, or you get wisdom from mistakes. And I got to tell you, I've made my share of mistakes. So I share them very open and honestly with students. And it's amazing how I connect with them because of the fact that they see me as just being open about what I went through.
So, if it's all right, we're going to do a couple of wrestling questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Right. So I've marked basically the best ones that I really want to know about. And actually, one of my first memories of you wrestling, because I was more of a WWF fan, although we actually did get WCW in the UK from 91 to 95, as you probably know, because you toured here so much as well to support the television show. But one match I particularly remember you being in, Fall Brawl 95 with Brian Pillman. And I remember watching that and thinking, just a normal match to kick off a pay-per-view, and then it just kept getting better and better and better and better, to the point that I still remember it being just a brilliant match. And I actually searched for it recently, and loads of other people are raving about one of those forgotten matches that are just absolutely fantastic. So what do you remember I don't suppose you remember that match particularly, but how do you remember Brian Pillman as well? And
I absolutely remember that match because it was about a 30-minute match, and we don't normally wrestle that long. And for them to give us that time on an opening match of a pay-per-view was very unusual. And of course, it was, Brian, I got to give Brian the credit. I mean, he put that match together. And he was amazing to work with. And we both had a lot of similar moves so it really, I don't know, we just connected in that ring. And it's so amazing because I'm really good friends with his son, Brian Pillman Jr. now. And his son and his daughter actually came out to one of my presentations about 5 or 6 years ago. And he was in college and he was kind of an overweight kid. And he said that day inspired him to pursue that path of becoming a professional wrestler. And he's a great kid, man. And I'm just so proud to know him. But his dad, I got to tell you, man, that match is one of my favorite matches, was Fall Brawl with Brian Pillman, because I don't think anyone expected us to tear down the house like we did that day. And he was just a great worker, great guy to work with.
so you also worked with him in 91 as well, when he was doing the Yellow Dog, when he had the mask on, pretended to be someone else.
That one wasn't so good.
Oh, no.
I was as green as grass, okay? Yeah. I just got into business. Remember something, I didn't get into business. I started wrestling in 1990. I mean, my first match I ever had was 1990. So when I think about that, I just started. Next thing I know, they're putting me out there. I signed with WCW because I look like, Dusty Rhodes says, man, anybody tell you look like Little Richard. And that's the reason I got a job. But I didn't know how to wrestle. And it was guys that they put me on the road with to teach me along the way. That was very, very, I mean, think about this. My first match is like, I'm wrestling Sting. I'm wrestling, Cactus Jack. I'm wrestling Steve Austin. And here's this kid that didn't know how to wrestle. Next thing I know, I'm wrestling Ric Flair. I was like so nervous thinking I'm wrestling Ric Flair, Oh man, just great memories though, because it was like those guys just helped me get through those first couple of years to finally, be able to have some sort of work ethic or workability.
Well, was that instilled by the Malenkos as well, or the Simons, to use their real name? Because I didn't realize that you were trained by. Was it just Dean, or was it Larry?
No, it wasn't. No, Dean and Joe were not. They were on the road wrestling. I mean, it was his dad, Boris Malenko, was the guy that trained me. First trained me, and. What a great guy. Their school is about an hour away from where I used to live. And I used to drive there after work and on weekends. And I just, learned how to wrestle. And then some of the guys I met at the gym, they were the guys that were like beat up on national television. They got paid like $150 to drive from Venice, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia. It's about an 8-hour drive. They would drive up, wrestle, and then drive back, you know? And one day I said to them, I said, can I go with you guys? You know? And they said, yeah, you never know. They may pick you, you know? And sure enough, that's when Dusty Rhodes met me and thought I looked like Little Richard and gave me this incredible job as Johnny B. Bad and changed my whole life.
So was it genuinely that informal? You just turn up, stand in a line, almost. I won't use a crass euphemism there. There's always like a line of girls, and you have to pick which one you want, to go on television. Was it just that informal and just
great
hope for the best?
But yeah, very similar, man. I was in good shape. I worked out at the gym. I was tanned. And they put me in a match with Doom, Ron Simmons and Butch Reed. They were like the world tag team champions, and here I am, one of my first matches ever, And I don't know, I probably screwed up that match so bad, I just remember that they said Dusty wanted to see me after the match. I thought, oh gosh, yeah, I'm never going to be able to come back here again, and I really need the money. And it's so funny, but I didn't tell you the story, was that when I had my truck, I had this little Isuzu pickup truck that got repossessed. I was just dire straits, man. My life was just coming to an end until Dusty Rhodes gave me this job, and everything changed, man. It was just incredible. All my dreams and goals I had as a little kid were becoming a reality in my life, traveling the world, meeting movie stars and superstars, and it's just incredible journey.
So it was as simple creating the Johnny B. Bad character. It was, that guy looks like Little Richard, I'm going to make him the wrestling version of Little Richard. Or was there like a big load of meetings that happened and arguments about costumes and everything before going through?
I want to tell you this right now. Some of the greatest memories I have in professional wrestling was when Dusty Rhodes was teaching me how to become Johnny B. Bad, because he knew the character. He saw the character. I mean, he had that flamboyancy in him, and here I am, just this tough kid from New York. And he said, now can you say, oh, hush, and I'd go, oh, hush. He goes, no, do it. I go, oh, hush, and he had this mannerism, and I get laughing, and then he'd walk to the ring. He showed me how to walk to the ring. And I remember one of the first pay-per-views I ever did, I had to go up to the microphone and say, I'm so pretty, I should have born a little girl. Oh. And so Dusty's doing it for me. And I got to tell you, the greatest belly laughs we would ever have was watching when he get laughing, because then he'd get me doing it. And he goes, that's the way I want you to do it. And then he had me put all his makeup on. And it was just some great memories. And man, I love that guy. I often think in my life where I would be if it wasn't for Dusty Rhodes. And I'm not the only one that says that. I mean, there's so many guys out there that Dusty Rhodes gave a break to, that, gave him a character or whatever it would be. And he created the Johnny B. Bad character. And we just took it to another level when we introduced kind of the Muhammad Ali charismatic Johnny B. Bad Little Richard character that just became, I'm a bad man. And it just took off.
Did Dusty Rhodes ever use the word, I'm Genathan, baby, I'm Genathan?
You know what? Dusty would say things that I didn't really understand. And I would just be laughing because the way he would say it, or his mannerisms or whatever, and he'd say it like this. And I kind of didn't understand what he was saying because he has that kind of, Southern lisp kind of thing, but I don't know, even just thinking back now, I'm just great memories, man.
I've got to ask this actually, because I didn't even write this down. I was just thinking about this because Little Richard, obviously Johnny B. Bad, and they said Johnny B. Good, which is the Chuck Berry song, excuse me, the Johnny B. Bad character. But then the WWF in 1994 booked the actual Little Richard for WrestleMania to do the.
Yeah.
At any point, did you go to the management at the time and go, well, he's obviously taking bookings. Why don't we have him round here and do something maybe?
You know what? I think they did try to get him. I'm not real clear on it, but Little Richard, I remember one time they took a picture of me. He would hold up a poster like at one of his concerts, and it was a poster of me as Johnny B. Bad. And he'd say, they said he's pretty. He's not as pretty as me. And he ripped off the poster. But here's something that happened fairly recently. Little Richard died a year or two ago, and his driver contacted me through social media and said that Little Richard loved the character. And I tell you, I never, I always wondered, if Little Richard even knew or yeah, I mean, I knew he knew of me, but I wondered if what he thought about it or whatever. And to hear him say that, he said that he used to get laughing when I was on television, or, he got a real kick out of it. And that made me feel really good.
That's so funny as well, because around that same time, Wrestling Sting met, was he called Bernard Sumner, the actual Sting from the Police? Yeah. And there were photos going around as well. That's such a missed opportunity almost, that should have been.
Yeah, I would have loved to meet him. And they even, Hollywood even drew up a screenplay with me and Little Richard in this sitcom that we actually filmed without him because they were negotiating the deal with him. And it was written by Barry Vigon, who did a lot of the Seinfeld episodes. And it was called The Main Event, where Little Richard, I owned a gym in Atlanta called The Main Event, which Sting and Lex Luger really owned a gym called The Main Event in Atlanta, Georgia. So it was loosely based on that. But because I was on the road all the time, my father, who played Little Richard, who would be played by Little Richard, ran the gym. And of course, he'd get in all kinds of things. He'd have hookers there when I was gone, or all these crazy, funny storylines that happened. So we filmed a pilot of that episode back in 1992, I believe, or three, somewhere right around there. And it never came to fruition, but it was something that was a lot of fun, and hoped it would have made it back then.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to zoom through about 4 different questions here, but there's one thing I've heard one version of it, and I don't think I've ever heard your version of it. I believe it was in 1994, and you were feuding with the Honky Tonk Man.
Yes.
And it sort of just ended. Can you talk me through how it sort of started, how was Wayne to work with, and why it just completely ended, completely cold turkey, and then you moved on?
I don't know all the behind the scenes things. I was not very political in wrestling. That was one thing I was not very good at, And there were guys that were around for a while that were very political, and if they didn't want to maybe do the job or do the right thing or whatever it would be, they'd have a reason for it, and maybe sometimes rightfully so, But I just remember that he didn't. He didn't want to get beat by me or something. So he hit me over the head with the guitar. I don't know the whole story behind that. I don't think he really wanted to work with me. I was pretty green too back then. So I don't, it's a great question to ask him, but I thought he was a great guy. I mean, I recently saw him at one of the autograph sessions, and I got no problem with him. I mean, man, I got to tell you something. Too many guys in our business live with bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness. And it's a cancer that eats you alive, locks you in emotional prison, man. And I just refuse to be upset with somebody, It's just not more. Life is so good, man. I tell you, I hit the ground running every day, and I don't let anything from my past or unforgiveness with someone. And, sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. And many people have to make that decision. We all make mistakes in life,
I believe you're probably right there when Honky Tonk Man didn't want to do the job, because I don't believe he ever wanted to do the job to anybody ever under any circumstances. So even if it was a total guess, you're probably completely right there.
So I guess I'm in good company.
Yes. I'm going to skip ahead straight away again, and we're going to go to the WWF. Well, it's actually sort of WCW to WWF, actually, because I always heard the reason you left WCW in '96, there's 2 different reasons. One of them was you weren't happy with the money you were making, and another one was that I read recently that you weren't happy with the valet you had at the time, which was Diamond Dallas Page's wife, Kimberly.
I'd love to just straighten that out. First of all, I was making really good money with WCW at the time. I was on a guaranteed contract, and they treated me really good there. Eric gave me a great deal for that time. It was amazing, and what happened was Kimberly is a sweetheart, man. I mean, I enjoyed working with her.
Stunning
Yes.
Lady,
what happened was at that time, my daughter was around, 8 or 9 years old, and it was very difficult for her to seeing me on television with another woman. And she'd be crying at night when I come home, and she said I was leaving her mommy and stuff. And all I said was, I didn't really need a valet. I mean, Johnny B. Bad didn't necessarily have a valet, didn't have to have somebody walking them to the ring. And I just brought it up that maybe it'd be better that if I didn't have it, and it became this whole religious thing and stuff. And it was not that at all. It was just that it was really more about my daughter being hurt and seeing her so upset. I thought, you know what, let me just talk about it. But it kind of got blown out of proportion, and maybe someone has their own version of it or whatever. But that's from my point of view. I just remember that as being the reason. WCW gave me a great deal, and I always felt that to make it in wrestling or to look back on your career was to go to the dance, and the dance was WrestleMania. And I think anyone that's been in WrestleMania understands that is a Super Bowl, that is the World Cup of wrestling. Okay, so I always wanted to end my career at the WWF or WWE, and I had great meetings with Vince. And I came to Vince. I knew I already had a guaranteed contract with WCW. So when I met with Vince, I told him what I wanted. I wanted a guaranteed contract. Now, he never gave out a guaranteed contract before. I was the first one to get it. And he said he'd never done that before. And I said, I want a guaranteed contract. I want a signing bonus, because I knew he really wanted me. Okay. And I think maybe he thought he'd get that Johnny B. Bad character loosely, not the name Johnny B. Bad, but based loosely on that character. And I said I also wanted my wife to fly everywhere I flew. No, not be my valet, just fly everywhere, because I didn't want to go through a divorce. I seen all my friends were getting divorced, and in the road can be very troublesome, and you need a lot of temptation. So I thought, what if I got my wife with me? Number one, we're experiencing the world together. And I said to Vince, I go, Vince, you might want to think about it. She's really attractive, and you might want to let her be my valet since you're flying her everywhere anyway. That was the deal. He was going to fly. No, he never planned on her become Sable, or that was part of my deal. So I got this incredible deal with WWF. I mean, they gave me more money, bigger signing bonus, first guaranteed contract. My wife got to fly everywhere I flew. And so when Vince sent me my ticket to fly to Connecticut to sign my deal, he sent me my ticket, and I said, well, where's my wife's ticket? And he goes, I got a flyer to sign your deal with you. I go, Vince, she goes everywhere I go. And sure enough, he sent her a ticket. And when we walked into his office, he saw her and he goes, I got to put her on TV. And that was it, man. And then we came up with the name Sable, and the rest was history.
So you said WrestleMania. You actually debuted at WrestleMania 12, not in the ring, but in the backstage. And I'll always remember it, because it was one of my first videotapes, and Todd Pettingill is introducing you, and he calls you Marc Mero. And were you just like, what?
It was the whole thing. I got to tell you, going from a fun character that you could act any way and people would accept it, to this character that I remember having the creative meeting, and they had this Wildman Marc Mero, and it was like, what is a wild man? I remember Vince asked me if I could do like a Tarzan yell, like, and I said to him, I go, Vince, I don't got a very strong voice. I don't think I can do that. I mean, what am I, from the jungle? I mean, who am I, So I never really connected with it. The fans never really connected with it. And of course, you're walking out there with this beautiful girl who the fans love. So it was just a natural for us to have that animosity and the jealousy and all that, which turned out to be a great storyline.
It's funny, actually, you mentioned, because you were paired up with Triple H straight away. And did you, number one, how was he to work with, and how was he sort of behind the scenes? Was he actually quite quiet, or was he always hanging around with Sean, or did you not talk to him much backstage? Well, and also, do you realize you've probably beaten him more than anybody else in history?
Yeah, when I really think about it, I probably wrestled him more than anybody else in history, because we were in WCW as John Paul Levesque and Johnny B. Bad. Of course, I beat him every night, and then of course, going over to WWE. But he did get his first championship belt was from me, was the Intercontinental belt, was his first title win. And you know what? I got to tell you, if I could, we were never friends, like in the business. We cordial with each other, but we never hung out or anything. But if I could ever say anything to Triple H is thank you, man. I learned so much from that guy. He is an unbelievable worker. I mean, he really studies he studies the game. He studies matches. And I became a better wrestler because I got to wrestle him so much. There was 3 guys that I really wrestled a lot. And if anybody could hear these names, number 1, Triple H, number 2, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and number 3 was Diamond Dallas Page. 3 guys that I wrestled probably maybe a couple hundred times each, that what a blessing to work with guys like that, And then there was guys where it was just a night off, like, oh my gosh, Eddie Guerrero, a night off, like just fun. Ric Flair, my gosh, his whole match, you know what I mean? It was like another fun guy to work with, and Arn Anderson. Oh my gosh, I was blessed to wrestle some of the greatest.
Do you know one person you were not blessed to wrestle, and he was one of the greatest, Mr. Perfect? Do you remember maybe the storyline that it was?
I did wrestle Mr. Perfect.
Oh, did you wrestle him?
Yes,
I thought you never wrestled him.
We wrestled in when Hulk Hogan started this program called XWF.
Of course,
he went there,
you
and
did.
I got to wrestle him, and he was another guy, a night off. I mean, that was the only time we wrestled was that one time, but he was smooth, man. That guy was just a smooth wrestler, I tell you, some of the greatest guys I ever worked with were guys like that. Like when I wrestled Eddie Guerrero, we did a match that went time limit draw or something, when I was a world television champion, and I did some moves in that match that I've never even done before. And it was because Eddie would say, "Oh no, you could do this," and he'd show it to me backstage, like the sweep of a leg or whatever it would be. And I said, "Okay, I'll try it." We're doing it on live TV, It wasn't like we could cut and paste or something. It was like live television. So it was man, just another one. I love that guy, man. That was probably one of the hardest guys. That when I lost Eddie, was probably one of the hardest friends I lost in the business.
So do you remember back in '96, because Mr. Perfect was getting aligned with Triple H, or he was probably still Hunter S. Helmsley at this point.
Right.
And if memory serves me correctly, it was on an episode of Raw. Mr. Perfect turns on you, costs you the Intercontinental Championship,
Yes.
gives it to Triple H. Do you remember what the plans might have been going forward? Were you going to wrestle Triple H? Were you going to wrestle Kurt? Or both of them? Do you remember the initial plans before Kurt jumps to WCW like a week later?
Triple H and I were together for a long time. And of course, after that, we went to all the house shows, wrestling each other every single night, because it was me chasing the belt, and then, and he, it's the old slip on the banana peel, and he'd walk away with the belt every night, whether there's disqualification or something that happened, Mr. Perfect's interference or something. So it was like, I'd beat him up the whole match and look like I'm going to win. And then something happens where he walks away and still retains the belt. So we stayed together for quite a while, even after he did win the belt. And then I had a triple threat match with him, Goldust, and myself. And that's where I blew out my knee and needed reconstructive surgery. And it led to 8 months being off while I was healing from that.
Yeah, I remember in '97. So you sort of disappeared. Are we talking maybe around January, February? It was early '97, I seem to remember, that you got the knee injury. Mm-hmm. And do you remember when, I'm going to assume it was Vince Russo at this point, or it probably was Vince Russo at this point, came to you and said, "This is what we want you to do to turn bad guy. We want you to become, enraged with jealousy that your missus was getting more cheers than you." But it actually started quite early. So it started almost months before you actually came back into the ring. So, was it always planned to be a very slow burning process? And who came to you with the idea of turning bad guy?
It was the fans really gave it to us. Because, here they are, I'm working my ass off in the ring, doing all these moves and trying so hard. And she would just walk up on the apron and they'd go crazy. So we knew this was a great storyline, and of course, man, I was all for it. When we would sit down with ideas that we had on bringing her up, and obviously for her to go up, I need to come down, but me being the jealous, insecure idiot, so it worked unbelievable, everything that happened. And, and a lot of people say, well, you let a girl beat you up, it kind of ruined your career and so on, and whether that's true or not, at that time we were making more money and we were a married couple, so we looked at our
and you had one bank account as well, I'm assuming. You had a shared bank account.
So we were, it's lifting her up is only, I'm not a guaranteed contract. I'm making the same amount every week, no matter what, so bringing her up, her merchandise and everything was selling only second to Stone Cold at that time, It was incredible. So I wouldn't have changed a thing, when you look back on life. And I look at, all the paths I took in life, good or bad, whether something's got screwed up, whatever, all those paths led to right where I am today. And I am so blessed and so happy and healthy. And I got some of the greatest friends and family in the world. So I couldn't be more blessed to be where I am now.
Well, I've got a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go because I know time is tight and everything. So I'll give you one. And I actually spoke to Savio Vega on Monday, and he went really in depth with the Brawl for All. And just for me, I just loved the Brawl for All because it's just it was such a wacky concept.
Yeah, it was.
And even the people who really could fight in real life had like no time, like racked with injuries and no time to prepare. So it was just, I just like to see people fight, quite frankly. So what do you remember? Actually, do you remember the first time? Was it like a big meeting where you were first introduced to the Brawl for All concept?
No, I remember just being on the road. I got a call from Vince, and he said, "This is an idea we had, and we're asking the guys who want to get into it, And the thing I look at is that the guys that did it were the guys with some balls. I mean, it takes a lot of balls to get in the ring and really fight somebody, because of my past boxing career. But this was so different than boxing. Because now at this point, I've already had 5 shoulder surgeries, 5 elbow surgeries, reconstruction of my knee. So it's like all these things that were different in my life compared to that young boxer I was when I won the Golden Gloves and all that. It was much different, But realizing that these guys can take you down too. So I never even got really hit in any of those matches. Like I never even got hurt or anything, or I was one of the lucky ones that didn't get hurt. But I remember at the time, the one guy I just did not get along with, was Bradshaw. And when I say I didn't get here's the thing. I looked at him as a bully. He was mean to people and stuff. And before I tell you the story, I want to just say that he is such a great guy now. I mean, what he does for humanity and these kids in other countries, I tell you, I can't say enough great things about him. I'm honored to call him a friend now. I mean, 2 guys that couldn't stand each other we both have compassion for other people. We both help a lot of people. So now get back to the story when I did hate him and he hated me, because I'll tell you something, when we wrestle each other on the road and he'd give me a power bomb, he would it was almost like he's put me through the mat, through the ring, through the wood, he hurt me or would try to hurt me, and I was always a tough guy, so I was not afraid. But when I found out I got to fight him the Brawl for All, I was really excited. And they even wanted me to fight somebody different because they said that, I can't remember the whole storyline, but it was something. I go, no, I want to fight Bradshaw, and we had our match. It went 3 rounds, but it went to a draw. So, they're taking the gloves off, and all of a sudden it's like one more round. It's like, oh God, here we go again. And they gave him the decision. I thought I won it, but they gave him the decision. And but it's all water under the bridge now, man. But it was a crazy concept. I couldn't believe how many guys got seriously hurt doing it. So looking back, it probably was not the greatest idea that they came up with. And it really hurts the product because wrestling being professional wrestling, there's storylines and stuff. This way, everybody looked kind of just wild and crazy. And then we weren't even sure, is this real or is this, planned or what,
I remember Savio told me, well, I remember it was only 4 days ago, Savio told me that he was facing the German bodybuilder guy, Brackus, Akim Albrecht. And he didn't know it was a real fight until he was in the ring. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure we're fighting? It's like, yes, we're fighting. Yes, we're fighting. Are you sure? And he ended up getting a broken nose for trouble, and then he just disappeared forever. The poor fellow. Apparently, he's a lovely guy as well. But it's actually weird. I brought up Bradshaw. I didn't realise that you didn't like him or anything. All I know is when I watched it maybe a couple of years ago, the entire Brawl for All, on the face-off before you're about to fight, he's boring a hole through you, and you're doing the same back. And I was reading between the lines thinking, these guys do not get along in real life. And apparently that was true.
Yeah, I had no fear and he had no fear. So it was one of those two guys just, man, it was like, it was, what? It's funny because when you dislike someone so much, and that, first of all, I want to say that there's not a person in this planet I hate now, okay? I've learned so much from being angry or bitter in life, and to become friends with someone that you dislike so much, it makes your friendship that much stronger. And I just can't say enough good things about him and what he does with young people today, because I do it too. And so I got that heart. I know he does. and we had our moment where we didn't like each other, but now it's all good.
So I know it was like a curtain sellout in the back for a lot of the matches. Who did you cheer harder for when they got dropped? Was it Bradshaw in the finals, or was it Dr. Death, Steve Williams? Were you more like, yes?
I really liked Dr. Death. He was a good guy, you know. I mean, you know, the things about Steve was that, you know, we used to sit up before the matches, we'd sit up in the stand, sometimes just talk about life. And he always talked about his family. So I always felt him like, of all his accomplishments and stuff, he never kind of bragged about himself. He would talk about his family and things he got going on the farm or whatever it was, you know. And I don't know, just I really took a liking to him. And of course, not having a liking at that time toward Bradshaw, you know, I couldn't be happier to see him get, you know, iced.
No, fair enough. I bring it up specifically because Savio told me that everyone was, because Jim Ross had been telling everyone that this is the guy who's going to beat you all. This is going to be the guy who beats you all.
That was kind of unfair for Steve because, you know, he was built up so much that, you know, everybody thought he was going to, you know, run through everyone. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And he got hurt pretty bad, too. I mean, it really ended his career.
Yeah, that's he just wasn't quite the same. Maybe he was like 3 or 4 years out of his prime, but it's just all those Japan matches. So I believe that just sort of took his toll on his body. I can either ask one more question, or are you?
No, I'm good. I'm
sort of
done.
raring to go?
I got a few. Don't worry.
Oh, all right then. Okay then. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll probably. Oh, well, here's the one then. I wrote a couple of years ago a book on Owen Hart, all dedicated to all his pranks, and collating over 160. And you actually make it in one of them, but it was for a Davy Boy Smith rib.
Yes.
I won't tell you which one's which, but have you got a good story about both of them?
Well, the one that with Owen that I remember the most was with Davy Boy Smith. I think you know the story where I was wrestling Davy Boy, and what happened was me and Davy Boy were in the locker room discussing our match. And Owen comes in and, you know, hey, how you guys doing? And, you know, we're going good. We're just talking about the match. You know, he goes, okay. He goes, well, you guys are up in 2 more matches. Like, okay, cool, man. We'll get ready. And when he leaves, all of a sudden I hear the door close. And then it sounded like it bolted, you know, like there was a sliding bolt or something, you know. And didn't really think much of it. Me and Davey got stunned and he goes to go out and the door was locked. And Owen padlocked the door and we couldn't get out. Now, Davey got the thing that was so funny was Davey, when he got mad, would just be like, and I started laughing because he was just irate. But the madder he got, the longer Owen was keeping us in there. And all of a sudden, I hear my music playing. And we're at this point, we're like begging him, Owen, please open the door, you know? And my music runs through and it's all of a sudden starts playing again. So now I'm like really screwed, man. They're going to kill me, you know? And finally the door was open and Owen goes, I didn't know it was locked. Like he acted like he had nothing to do with it, you know? So just the typical Owen, you know, just him and Davey were masters at it.
Do you know what's funny about that is I think I'm right in the research and doing this, but Owen was doing live commentary on that show. So I don't even know how he managed to get to the back and then straight back to the front again to do the commentary. Does that ring a bell, or have I got that wrong?
I remember the commentary in South Africa when I wrestled Davey Boy there, but this was I don't think this was in South. This was a house show somewhere that he locked us in because I don't think he would have never done that on because that was televised in South Africa. I don't think he would ever. Well, you never know with Owen. I shouldn't even say that. I don't put nothing past that guy. He was so much fun. You know, there were just some guys that came to the locker room that you just enjoyed seeing, and he was just a lot of fun.
Well, I'll tell you what. Then I'm actually going to zoom back then because I skipped through quite a few WCW questions. So I'll re-edit. I do a lot of editing with these things, sort of keep them nice and tight and everything. I'd also edit out my and forgetting things, obviously. You're one of the people, actually. So you went to WCW in 1991, I believe.
Yes.
So you would have been probably one of the only people, really, to have been under the reigns of Jim Herd, Kip Fry, Bill Watts, and Eric Bischoff. I suppose there's actually quite a few people who did that. But do you remember, first off, Jim Herd? Do you remember any stories about Jim Herd?
All I can remember is if Jim Herd was there when I got there, he was there for such a short time. I never got to know him. You know, I was more, under that, uh, Bill Watts, Bill Watts, Eric Bischoff, and Dusty Rhodes was there for a while. So I don't really remember Jim Herd too much. Oh, and obviously Kip Fry too. He was there when I remember him first coming in when I was there too.
Yeah. Did you sort of hope that you got signed when he was writing the checks?
Um, well, my first my first contract was a year, and then it doubles the next year, and then my third contract, thank God, was done by Eric Bischoff because Bill Watts cut everybody's pay in like in half. He made guys take pay cuts, and he just came in there and just bulldozed everything. But thank goodness I was getting ready to leave for the WWF on my third year, and I went and had dinner with Vince, and we were coming to terms. And Eric gave me a sweet deal to keep me there for 3 more years. So it wasn't 3 more years later that I got to finally go to the WWF.
Well, so do you remember what other changes Bill Watts made? Because I remember he took the mats away at one point.
Nothing off the top rope. Couldn't do jump off the top rope. Took the mats away. It was just it was like, I don't know. It was like high school football or something where the coach just was like dogmatic on it. This is how it's going to be, with no, you had no say, and he was very strict, very strict. I mean, there were a lot, you weren't allowed to if you're wrestling a guy, you weren't allowed to ride in the same car with him. Good guys have to be with good guys and bad guys with bad guys,
Do you also remember, because I remember this from Mick Foley's first book, you couldn't leave the building until...
Oh, yeah. I until the matches were all over, I believe. I think he made everyone stay, which I got to tell you, when you look back on it, and I've talked about this before, is one of the guys I respect the most that watched matches all the time was Steve Austin. He just learned everybody's moves. He watched the matches, and then you wonder why you have such good match with this guy. He knows all your moves. He knows what to call. He was amazing, So watching the matches does help you become a better worker, better wrestler. But, some of the old timers are like, I ain't going to stay and watch a match. I want to go home or whatever,
So you maybe the further on in your career, maybe you could appreciate some of the things Bill Watts was doing then.
I can, yes. But, looking back more on things that I've learned through when I wish I would have done different, that I could have been a much better worker, were things like watching a guy like Stone Cold, watching the matches all the time, or Diamond Dallas Page videotaping all the matches. He was always videotaping matches, and Diamond Dallas Page and I would go down to the power plant and try to get better with our moves. But it's not so much the moves, it's the psychology of wrestling that's really important, that a lot of people don't realize. Some of the best workers were not guys that are doing high spots,
Right, so I'll do one more question and then I will let you go, because I know you're a very busy man. Very busy man. It sounds like still, even in these COVID times as well. And I thought I'd just do a little word association thing, WCW version, about 12 names. If they're cool, well, I know you're going to say pretty much everyone's cool and everything like that. But if you've got a tiny story to throw in, or just a little funny tidbit, do let me know. I've got about 12 names, and the first one, Tom Zenk.
Oh, just a very good worker. But I think he gave himself too much heat by complaining a lot, and I think he got to the wrong ears from complaining too much. But great worker and a nice guy too, man.
Yeah, he had the look and everything. I never understood why he didn't, go further up the card.
Yeah, it's sometimes when you complain a lot, or you're, I don't know, it's just one of those things.
Missy Hyatt.
Did some things with her, with her and Medusa had a bikini contest, and she was a lot of fun. Missy was a really nice person. To me, she was a sweetheart, so I just got good fond memories of Missy.
Tony Schiavone.
Great announcer, him, Jim Ross, there's the guys that just, I don't know, it's their voice, you hear their voice and you just get excited about a match.
Ricky Morton.
Great guy. Probably got in more trouble with him than I cared to.
Oh, you got to mention what? No, I
Yeah.
won't. I won't
When
force
I
it.
first got on the road, I was a little wild too, and wanted to kind of fit in. Ricky Morton was a wild man. That guy, I tell you something, he can go night after night and still have a 10-star match. It's just incredible, man. He was a machine. I don't even know how he's still alive, but
He's still doing hurricanranas and stuff. He's like 150,000 years old, and he's
I
still doing
know.
flips. It's amazing.
But he's one of those guys you just love him, man. He's always in a good mood too, always in a good mood.
Still got the mullet as well.
Yes.
Mr. Sleepy, Curtis Hughes.
I saw him in an autograph session a couple of years back, and didn't have a lot of interaction with him, but was always amazed at how he could sleep standing up. So, he had a gift, and you couldn't tell because he had glasses on all the time.
The Steiner brothers.
Tough guys, man. Didn't have a lot of interaction with Scott, but became fairly friendly with Rick. And I actually spoke at Rick's kids' school, which was really cool to meet him about, 6 or 7 years ago. And then, of course, inspiring him at his school, and then seeing him go on to, try out for the NFL. And now he's in he's with the WWE or NXT in one of the programs.
Brian Knobs.
Another, funny, crazy, man, geez.
You've got a story in there that you just can't say out loud.
You know what? I don't like to implement anyone because it was meant in good humor. But I do remember we were backstage at one of the arenas, and it was a trainer's office, and he gave me something to. We were doing a lot of drugs back then too, man. He gave me something to inhale. I don't know what it was, but I ended up in my rental car. So out cold. So that was my memory of Brian Knobs.
Paul Orndorff.
I only worked with him a couple times. In fact, the match after I wrestled Brian Pillman, one of my best matches, I had to wrestle him the next night on Monday Nitro. And but easy to work with. Old school, easy guy, not a lot of high spots or anything. Just listen and these old guys, the old timers, man, they knew their stuff.
Speaking of which, Rick Rude.
Oh man, I got to tell you, I wrestled Rick when he was a world champion, and it was for like Saturday Night Live on WCW. And I was just amazed how he took this young Johnny B. Bad character and put me over. I mean, he let me do so many things, like where it looked like I was going to be the champion, 1, 2, barely kick out, and just made me shine, and I was like so thankful for that, but also a very tough guy. Nobody messed with him.
I've got 3 or 4. I haven't got my glasses on, so I'm not reading them. I've got 3 more. Shane Douglas.
You know what? I remember riding in the car with him and Ricky Steamboat one time or a couple times, and very knowledgeable, smart guy. But people don't give him the credit. I don't really know, but he's a very intelligent man. And good conversation, good memory too, like matches and things. It was just amazing listening to him and Ricky Steamboat talking.
Scotty Flamingo, Raven.
You know what? I don't give Scotty enough credit, but I want to give him a lot of credit right now. When I first got in the business, they put me with Scotty in a lot of the house shows, and I learned so much from him, and just very, very, very smart guy. I think he's got a really high IQ, but he's a really smart guy, and he really worked with me and helped me out a lot. And I probably should say that more in my interviews, but he really, I can't thank him enough, because he really helped me develop the character. I mean, we did some silly thing when it was Scotty Flamingo, who's the prettiest in WCW. We're fighting over who's the prettiest. So you look back on some of the stuff we did, it's just hilarious.
You learn never to share a car with him, though, because he'll just talk your ear off.
Yes.
And one more, Paul Heyman.
Oh man, one of the guys when I was a guy that got beat up on television. I remember one day, and I'll never forget this. He was on the payphone at a lot of the wrestlers stayed at the Hilton, and I remember after I was a little dejected before I heard that Dusty Rhodes thought I looked like Little Richard. It was like when I was. It was the time before I came. It was my first time I came, I believe, and I remember walking by him on the payphone. I didn't even know him. I mean, I knew who he was. Paulie Dangerously. It was like I know who he was, and he said, "Hold on a second." He held the phone down. And he goes, "You're going to be big in this business." I'll never forget that, man. And I was nobody, and he just, I don't know. It just made me feel so good that somebody like him recognized, I don't know what it was he saw in me, but it just made me go, wow, maybe I can really make in this business. And then, of course, the next time I came was when Dusty gave me the little Johnny B. Bad character.
Right, that's the entire list. I had to whittle down so many people then. I was going to ask about like Max Payne. I was going to ask about everybody inconceivable, but I'll leave it to those 12. And I know we've gone a little over time because I know you've got a ton of other interviews today. So thank you so much for taking the time with me. I will give you the floor now to whatever you want to promote. So please go ahead.
I got to tell you, the UK fans are some of the best wrestling fans in the world. That was, we always sold out there. It was just an incredible time every time we went to the UK. Just crazy wrestling fans. In fact, one of the guys I really want to give a lot of credit to was my growth was Steve Regal. Steve Regal was another guy that worked with me and helped me so much. And I can't thank him enough also. I just want to say that, when people tell you that you can't do something, or people say you're not big enough, you're not smart enough, you're not qualified to do that. The reason why people tell you can't do it is because they can't do it. Don't ever give up on dreams and goals, and pursue your passion in life. Treat others with respect. Kindness goes so far. My dad always taught me that it doesn't cost anything to be nice to people, and you'll see how far that can take you in life. God bless you all.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mark. Great talk. If you ever want to come on again, for any reason, promote whatever you want, please do, because I only 2 pages worth of questions there.
Well, I do want to say this.
I only get through like a third of it.
I want to say this though, we are working on a UK tour when this pandemic ends to come out there and speak at schools out there. So if that does happen, I'd love to meet you in person and maybe do a live broadcast with you sometime.
Yeah, I would absolutely love it as well. Absolutely love it. Right, so I will sign off for now. So thank you very much. And for Marc Mero and myself, James, thank you for listening.